Okay, in this video, I'm going to give you a brief introduction to the Desmos graphing calculator. You'll notice that I've got the College Board Desmos version up on my screen, and then I've got this problem set over here on the right. If we start with number one, all I want us to do is to evaluate this expression. And so if I start trying to type it exactly the way that it appears, I'm going to eventually run into some big problems. So for example, once I get here to this multiplication symbol, if I try to enter that as an X, it doesn't like it. That's because multiplication is not denoted by an X in Desmos. It is denoted by the centered dot that we're typically accustomed to. So students and you can use this multiplication button on the calculator, or you can do Shift 8, which would be the asterisk symbol, and that will give you the multiplication. Now, if I try to keep going here, again, I'm going to notice that I'm running into some problems because this is telling me that this is a one-element list. That's not what I want. And the problem here is that I have brackets that are basically bounding my expression. And so even though this is written with brackets like we typically would see it, everything in Desmos that is a grouping symbol needs to be done with parentheses. And so when I change those to parentheses, what I can see is that now it will start evaluating. The next thing that I want to do is add the square root of 225 over the cube root of 125. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add, and then I'm going to introduce a fraction by hitting the division symbol, or similarly, you could use the backslash key on the keyboard. Now, this will give me a fraction skeleton, and I can type in the square root. Here is a square root right here, 225. Then in the denominator, we want to make sure that we either arrow or click down. And to do a cube root, I go here into the functions and scroll all the way down until I see this nth root button right here, where I can first of all enter in the root. So I want the third root of 125. And this tells me that the answer to this expression is 159. But what I notice is that I have a typo, so I'm going to delete out that 0 there and get the answer of 51. So we want to make sure that we don't have any typos, obviously. And now it looks like this expression matches this expression in Desmos language. Okay, if we look at the second problem, we want to know the linear function that passes through these 2 points. The way that we can do this is using a linear regression. And the way that we would do that in Desmos is by first of all creating a table. So I'm going to go to this plus sign, hit add item, and add a table. I'm going to type in those 2 points, -5 and 2. I'm just using the arrow keys to arrow over and enter those new points. And then in the second row, I'm going to write my regression expression, which is y sub 1, which you don't have to type anything to get the sub. All you have to do is type y1. And then approximately, which is shift tilde, which is the key on the keyboard just to the left of 1. So this means approximately. It's a way to denote a regression. And then we want mx1 plus b. And what that will tell me are what the parameters are for m and b that fit this line. And if you wanted to, you could go to the default zoom and see here is that linear expression. Those are the 2 points right there that I typed in. And so I can see that this linear function does in fact pass through those 2 points. Now, what if my answer is not in decimals? What if I would like to see m and b in fraction form? Then I can come down to line 3 and type m, and then this convert to fraction button appears here on the left. And so I can hit convert to a fraction. It will convert it to a nice 1/2. I can do the same thing with b, and that will convert to a 9/2. And so I know that my equation is y equals 1/2 x plus 9/2. Moving on to the third question here, we want to know the quadratic function that passes through these 3 points. And so if we start over from scratch, again, what we can do here is add a table. So I'm going to add a table, type in these points here, and then we are ready to go with our regression expression, but this time it's going to be for a quadratic function. And so it's going to look very similar to our linear function regression, but this time it will be in the form of a quadratic. And so again, y1 is approximately ax1 squared. And so I'm doing shift 6 and then a 2 in order to get that in the exponent, and then I need to arrow to the right to get out of that exponent. So you'll see and notice kind of the difference where the cursor is. Here the cursor is in the exponent. When I arrow to the right, it goes back down to normal, and I want to enter in bx1, and then finally plus c. And so I get my nice values for a, b, and c, which is going to allow me to come over here and type my answer. Y equals 7x squared minus 10x plus 2. Okay, number 4 is an easier question. It's just asking for the vertex and the y-intercept of the graph of this quadratic function. So again, starting from scratch here, what I want to do is first of all type that function in exactly the way it appears, and then look at the graph. Now, right now it's not totally on screen. So what I can do is I can use the zoom in and zoom out buttons, or I can click and drag my screen. Students would be able to use a touch screen and actually pinch to zoom in or out. And once I get a good look at it, I can click on the graph, and I see that the vertex and the y-intercept are both denoted by gray coordinate points here. And so I see that the vertex is 3/4 and 12.5, and the y-intercept is 0 and 17. And so I can come over here and type my answers just the way that I see them on the Desmos graphing calculator. Okay, for question number 5, we want to find the solution to this system of equations. Now, what's nice about the College Board version of the Desmos graphing calculator is that I can actually type in both of these equations without solving either one of them for y. And so if I go in the first line and type in my first equation, and then go to my second line and type in my second equation, what I'm looking for is the intersection point. So again, I can't see it on my screen. I could go back to the default zoom and look at it. There it is right there. That is the solution point for this system of equations. And so 7 and -2 will be the answer. Notice how easy that is. Students do not even have to solve for y in order to get the answer. Finally, I want to show you how to do function notation using Desmos. And so if we're given a function here, we want to know what the value of f of -1 is. And what's nice about the Desmos graphing calculator is that when you type that function in, it will allow you to evaluate it at any x value. And so typing it in, making sure we don't have any typos, and then on the second line, just typing in f of -1, and it tells me immediately, with very little work on my part, that the answer is 97. This has been a brief introduction to Desmos and some of the things that you can do on it when answering questions on the SAT. If you have any questions, you can reach out to Ryan Castle. My email address is rcastle@mesquiteisd.org.